When your own flesh and blood plots against you, the pain doesn't just sting, it shatters your entire world. I never saw it coming. Not from my Patrice, not from my own daughter. My name is Rose Coleman. At 62 years old, I've seen my share of heartbreak. I've held the hands of dying patients during my 30 years as a nurse. I've watched my beloved husband, Robert, take his final breath after our 40 years together. I've weathered storms that would break most people. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what my daughter did to me. It started with what seemed like love. "Mom, you've worked so hard your whole life," Patrice would say, her voice honey-sweet as she stroked my gray hair. "You deserve to rest now. Let me take care of you for once." Those words warmed my heart. After decades of early morning shifts, midnight emergencies, and the bone-deep exhaustion that comes from putting everyone else first, the idea of being cared for felt like a gift I'd earned. So, when Robert passed away from heart failure 3 years ago, I didn't hesitate when Patrice suggested I sell my modest home and move in with her family. Her husband Greg seemed supportive, and my 2 grandchildren were thrilled to have Grandma Rosie around all the time. The first few months were everything I'd hoped for. Sunday family dinners, helping with homework, watching my grandchildren grow. I even had my own bedroom with a small sitting area. My sanctuary, Patrice called it. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with small comments about my belongings cluttering her space. Then my cooking, once praised by everyone, was suddenly too heavy or too old-fashioned. My opinions on the children's upbringing became outdated. My world began to shrink, room by room, comment by comment. "Mom, we need to talk about your future," Patrice said one spring morning, setting a cup of tea before me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She pulled out an envelope. Inside was a ticket to Jamaica and reservation details for an all-inclusive resort. 7 days of paradise, she beamed. "All expenses paid. Our gift to you." The way her fingers trembled slightly as she handed me the envelope should have been my first warning. The way Greg couldn't quite meet my eyes should have been the second. But I was blinded by gratitude and the childish hope that this meant they still valued me. If only I'd looked more closely at that ticket. If only I'd questioned why they packed almost all of my clothes. If only I'd noticed how Patrice hugged me at the airport. Too tight, too long, like someone saying a final goodbye. Because that gift wasn't a vacation at all. It was an exile, a banishment dressed up in palm trees and ocean views. What I didn't know as I boarded that plane was that I wouldn't be coming back. At least, that was their plane. If you're watching this and have ever felt the sting of family betrayal, hit subscribe right now. You need to hear what happened next, because what my daughter didn't know is that even at 62, this old nurse still had fight left in her. Also, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. But sometimes the deepest wounds come from those we trust the most, and sometimes those wounds become the very thing that sets us free. Moving in with Patrice wasn't a decision I made lightly. After 40 years in my own home, the little 3-bedroom ranch where Robert and I raised our family, packing up felt like erasing decades of memories. But grief makes you vulnerable in ways you can't anticipate. "Mom, it makes financial sense," Patrice insisted, her voice so reasonable it was hard to argue. "Why maintain a whole house when you could have your own suite in ours? We can put your money in investments instead." Their home was beautiful, I'll give them that. Nestled in an exclusive neighborhood with manicured lawns and towering oak trees, it looked like something from a magazine. 5 bedrooms, a chef's kitchen with granite countertops, and a backyard pool that glittered like blue diamonds in the sunlight. My suite was a converted guest room and attached bath in the east wing. Patrice had it painted a soft lavender. Your favorite color, Mom, though I've always preferred blue. Still, I was touched by the effort. The first changes were so subtle I barely noticed them. Patrice reorganized my closet because it makes more sense this way. She scheduled my doctor appointments without asking. When I mentioned wanting to join a book club at the local library, she frowned. Mom, those groups are filled with gossiping old ladies. I found an online reading app instead, much more convenient. Convenience. That became her favorite word. Everything was for my convenience, including the way my car disappeared. The insurance was astronomical for someone your age, Greg explained while Patrice nodded sympathetically. Besides, you don't need the stress of driving anymore. We'll take you wherever you need to go. Without my car, I became dependent on their schedules. My world contracted. Friends stopped calling because I always declined their invitations. How could I accept when I had no way to get there? Then came the financial help. Mom, managing all these accounts is so stressful for you, Patrice cooed, pushing papers toward me one evening. We've spoken to a financial advisor. If you add Greg as a co-signer on your accounts, he can handle all the tedious details. When I hesitated, Greg jumped in. Rose, you worked hard for your retirement. We just want to make sure it's protected. No one takes advantage of older folks like banks do. I signed the papers. What else could I do? They were just trying to help, weren't they? But Greg's behavior became increasingly odd. I'd catch him watching me from doorways, his expression unreadable. He'd ask probing questions about my insurance policies, my investments, even my jewelry. Just making inventory for the home insurance, he'd explain with the smile that never reached his eyes. Then came the phone restrictions. My old flip phone mysteriously broke, replaced by a sleek smartphone I could barely operate. Patrice installed the contacts, only family members and a few select friends. When I asked about adding others, she sighed. Mom, remember how that telemarketer almost scammed you last year? This is safer. I never remembered any telemarketer. The isolation happened so gradually I barely felt the walls closing in. My few remaining friends stopped dropping by after Patrice told them I needed rest and visitors were too stimulating. My grandchildren, once so eager to spend time with me, were suddenly too busy with activities. When we did interact, it felt choreographed, as if they'd been coached on what to say. One night, I overheard Greg and Patrice arguing in their bedroom. It's taking too long. The market's hot now. We need to move before rates change. I'm handling it, Patrice snapped back. She's my mother, for God's sake. We can't just... They went quiet when I accidentally knocked against the hallway table. The next morning, Patrice was all smiles, asking if I'd slept well, if I wanted pancakes for breakfast. That's when I noticed the framed photo of Robert. My last remaining connection to him had disappeared from my nightstand. Oh, I moved it to the attic for safekeeping, Patrice explained when I frantically searched for it. The cleaning lady kept bumping it. We'd never had a cleaning lady. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. The way my medications were always handed to me rather than kept in my bathroom, how my mail never seemed to arrive unless Patrice delivered it, already opened by a mistake. The hushed conversations that stopped whenever I entered a room. What I didn't realize then was that my golden years were being carefully reshaped into something else entirely. The vacation announcement came on a Tuesday morning over breakfast. I remember because it was pancake day, and Patrice had made my favorite, blueberry with real maple syrup. Looking back, I should have recognized this rare treat for what it was. Bait. Mom, we've been thinking, Patrice began, exchanging a quick glance with Greg. You've been looking so tired lately. Have I? I touched my face self-consciously. True, I hadn't been sleeping well. The constant feeling of walking on eggshells will do that to a person. Absolutely, Greg chimed in, setting down his coffee cup with authority. We're worried about your stress levels. Patrice reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Which is why we've decided to give you something special. From her purse, she produced a glossy brochure showcasing white sand beaches, palm trees, and crystal blue waters. Clipped to it was a printed itinerary and what looked like a plane ticket. A vacation? I asked, genuinely surprised. It had been years since I traveled anywhere. Not since Robert and I took that road trip to the Grand Canyon before his heart started giving him trouble. Not just any vacation, Patrice beamed. Jamaica. 7 days at the Blue Horizon Resort. All-inclusive, spa treatments, gourmet meals, beachfront accommodations. Jamaica? I echoed, trying to process this unexpected development. But I don't even have a passport. Already taken care of, Greg said with a wink. We expedited the application last month with that photo we took at Christmas card time. Remember? I didn't remember any such photo session, but lately my confidence in my own memory had been shaken by their constant corrections. This is very generous, I said carefully, but it seems sudden and expensive. Don't worry about the cost, Patrice waved dismissively. You deserve this, Mom. After everything you've been through, losing Dad, giving up your home, this is our way of saying thank you. Something about her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. When would this trip be? I asked. That's the best part. Greg leaned forward eagerly. You leave this Friday. This Friday? In 3 days? My stomach tightened. That's so soon. I couldn't possibly. Everything's arranged. Patrice cut in. Your packing list is already made. We'll handle everything here. All you need to do is relax and enjoy. Before I could formulate another objection, my 10-year-old grandson Tommy bounded into the kitchen, stopping short when he saw the brochure. Is Grandma going away? He asked, his voice oddly flat. Yes, honey. Grandma's going on a special trip, Patrice answered brightly. Tommy looked at me, then at his mother, his young face unreadable. For how long? Something in his tone sent a chill down my spine. Just a week, I assured him, reaching to ruffle his hair. He pulled away, something he'd never done before. Cool, he muttered, grabbing a muffin and disappearing upstairs without his usual hug. That afternoon, I found Patrice in my room, sorting through my closet with unusual intensity. You don't need to help me pack, I told her. I've been traveling since before you were born. Just making sure you have everything you need, she replied, not meeting my eyes. I noticed she was removing nearly all my clothes from the closet, far more than needed for a week-long trip. Are you redecorating while I'm gone? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. What? No, she laughed too quickly. Just deep cleaning, spring refresh, you know. Later, I overheard my 13-year-old granddaughter Lily on the phone with a friend. Yeah, Grandma's going to Jamaica on Friday, she was saying. Mom says we need to. What? No, I can't say that. Because it's not. She noticed me in the doorway and abruptly hung up. Everything okay, sweetie? I asked. Her eyes welled with tears. I'll miss you, Grandma, she whispered, hugging me fiercely. It's just a week, I reminded her, puzzled by her intensity. Right, just a week. She pulled back, studying my face,
as if memorizing it. The night before my departure, I found Greg in Robert's old study, now converted to his home office, shredding documents. He startled when I knocked, quickly covering a stack of papers. "Need something, Rose?" he asked. A vein pulsed in his forehead. "Just wondering if there's anything special I should know about Jamaica. Travel advisories or such?" "All in your travel packet," he replied, standing to usher me out. "Don't worry your head about details." Don't worry your head. As if I were a child instead of a woman who had managed a hospital ward, raised a family, and buried a husband. The morning of my flight, Patrice was oddly teary as she helped load my oversized suitcase into the car. Greg was tense, checking his watch repeatedly. "You'll call as soon as you land?" Patrice asked, gripping my hands. "Of course," I promised, searching her face. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt flash in her eyes. At the airport, their goodbye was rushed. Patrice hugged me too hard. Greg barely hugged me at all. Tommy clung to my waist until Patrice pried him away. Lily wouldn't look at me, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. As I boarded that plane, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right.
Jamaica was breathtaking. I'll give them that much. They chose a beautiful place to abandon me. The Blue Horizon Resort sprawled along a pristine beach, its white buildings gleaming against the turquoise Caribbean. My room overlooked swaying palm trees and endless ocean. The staff greeted me with warm smiles and cold fruit punch. "Welcome home, Mrs. Coleman," the concierge said, helping with my oversized luggage. "You're with us for 7 wonderful days, yes?" I nodded, still disoriented from the flight and lingering unease. "Yes, just a week." That first day, I tried to embrace the experience. I walked barefoot along the shore, letting warm waves tickle my ankles. I sipped a fruity drink by the pool and chatted with a couple from Toronto. I even scheduled a massage for the following afternoon. "See, Rose," I told myself, "you were worried over nothing. This is a gift. Enjoy it." But that night, my call to Patrice went straight to voicemail. I left a greasy message about my safe arrival and beautiful accommodations. When I tried Greg's number, the same thing happened. Even the house phone rang endlessly. Probably just busy with the kids, I reasoned, pushing down my anxiety. By the third day, I still hadn't reached anyone. My text messages showed as delivered, but remained unanswered. That hollow feeling in my stomach expanded. During breakfast, I befriended Eleanor, a retired teacher from Michigan. My daughter surprised me with this trip, too, for my 70th birthday. She and my son-in-law are joining me tomorrow. "How lovely," I replied, trying to mask my envy. My daughter and her husband organized mine as well, but they couldn't get away from work. "When do you head home?" Eleanor asked. "Sunday," I answered automatically, then realized I hadn't actually seen my return ticket. I should double-check my flight details, actually. Back in my room, I opened the leather travel portfolio Patrice had prepared. Inside were my resort reservation, spa vouchers, a Jamaica tourism guide, and nothing else. No return ticket. No flight confirmation. My heart thumped painfully against my ribs. Perhaps it was an electronic ticket? I checked my new smartphone, fumbling through apps I barely understood. Nothing. With rising panic, I approached the front desk. The young woman's warm smile faded as I explained my situation. "Let me check our system, Mrs. Coleman." Her fingers moved across the keyboard. "I'm showing your resort stay ending Sunday, but there's... What is it?" I prompted, gripping the edge of the counter. "There's no linked departure information," she said carefully.
Sometimes when bookings come through third-party services, that happens. Do you have your return ticket or confirmation number? I thought it was in my travel packet, I explained, voice trembling slightly. Could you check if it was arranged through the resort? More typing, a small frown. I'm not seeing any return booking for you, Mrs. Coleman. Who arranged your travel? Perhaps we could contact them. My legs felt weak. My daughter. I'll call her right now. I retreated to a quiet corner of the lobby, hands shaking as I dialed Patrice's number. This time, miracle of miracles, she answered on the third ring. Mom, how's Jamaica? Her voice sounded artificially bright. Patrice, there's a problem. I can't find my return ticket. The resort has no record of my flight home. A long pause. Then, oh, about that. The lobby suddenly felt very cold despite the tropical heat. What about that, Patrice? My voice had dropped to a whisper. She sighed heavily. Mom, we need to talk. The trip, it wasn't exactly what we told you. Meaning, what exactly? We thought it would be easier this way, a clean break. You always loved the beach, talking about retiring somewhere warm someday. Patrice, I interrupted, ice forming around my heart. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Did you send me here permanently? Another pause, longer this time. We sold your house years ago. Your retirement savings have been reallocated. The market's been good to us, Mom. We've set up an account for you there. Not a fortune, but enough to get established. We found a nice senior community in Montego Bay. You did what? I nearly yelled, drawing concerned looks from nearby guests. Lowering my voice, I hissed, You stole my money, my home, and now you're, what, abandoning me in a foreign country? Don't be so dramatic, Patrice snapped, her facade cracking. We gave you 3 good years under our roof, fed you, housed you, took care of everything. But Greg and I need our lives back. The kids need space. This is best for everyone. Best for everyone? I echoed, tears streaming down my face. I'm your mother. I raised you. I loved you. How could you do this? Her voice turned cold. It's done, Mom. There's no money left for a ticket home. And even if you manage to come back, you have nowhere to go. The resort has contact information for Caribbean Haven Retirement Village. They're expecting you Monday. Patrice, please, I began, but the line went dead. I stood frozen, phone clutched to my chest, as the reality crashed over me in waves. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had discarded me like outdated furniture. They'd systematically stripped away my independence, my financial security, and now, my very place in the world. My own daughter had just exiled me from my life. I spent that night crying until my eyes swelled shut. The paradise outside my window now felt like a gilded cage. When morning came, I couldn't bring myself to leave my room. The breakfast I'd ordered sat untouched on the balcony table as I stared vacantly at the ocean that now separated me from everything I'd known. A gentle knock at the door finally roused me from my stupor. "Housekeeping?" called a warm, melodic voice. "Please come back later," I managed to croak. Instead of footsteps retreating, I heard, "You haven't touched your breakfast, and it's nearly lunch. Are you feeling unwell?" Something in her tone, genuine concern rather than resort protocol, broke through my fog. I dragged myself to the door and opened it to find a woman about my age, her dark skin contrasting with the crisp white uniform. Her name tag read, Gloria. She took one look at my puffy eyes and tear-streaked face, and her expression softened. "Oh, my dear, what's happened to you?" Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. My daughter's betrayal, the one-way ticket, the stolen money, all of it. Gloria listened without interruption, pulling up a chair beside the bed where I'd collapsed. When I finished, she didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, she took my hands in hers, her palms warm and calloused from years of hard work. "First thing you need to know," she said firmly, "is that this is not your fault. The second thing is that you are not alone." She shared that she'd worked at the resort for 15 years and had seen similar situations before. "Not exactly like yours," she clarified, "but older Americans sent away by family who found them inconvenient. It happens more often than people think." Gloria's shift ended at 3, and she offered to help me contact the American Embassy. "But first," she added, "you need to understand exactly what you're dealing with." She returned after work with her nephew Marcel, who worked in IT at the resort's business center. With his help, I was able to access my email, something Patrice had managed for me back home. What we discovered left me breathless with rage. Not only had my house been sold 3 years ago when I moved in with Patrice, but the proceeds, nearly $340,000, had been transferred into a joint account that Greg had systematically emptied. My monthly Social Security payments had been redirected. My retirement account had been liquidated. But the worst discovery was an insurance policy I'd never known existed. "They took out an insurance policy on you 2 years ago," Marcel explained, pointing to documents in my email archives. $500,000, and look who the beneficiaries are. Patrice and Greg, not my grandchildren, not my estranged son Thomas, the people who had just abandoned me in a foreign country. "They're waiting for you to die," Gloria said bluntly, "probably hoping the stress of relocation would be enough, given your age." The cold, calculated nature of their betrayal left me numb. "What do I do now?" I whispered. Gloria squeezed my shoulder. "You fight." Over the next 3 days, Gloria became my lifeline. She introduced me to her brother-in-law, a retired attorney who now operated a fishing charter. He helped me contact the American Embassy and explained my legal options. Elder financial abuse is a serious crime in the States, even across international lines, but you'll need to return home to press charges. "With what money?" I asked bitterly. "They took everything." Gloria and her family pooled together enough for a basic economy ticket back to the States. When I protested, she silenced me with a look. "My mother raised me to recognize family when I see it. Sometimes family is blood. Sometimes it's who God puts in your path when you need them most." With the embassy's help, I received an emergency passport replacement and temporary visa clearance. Marcel helped me forward critical emails to a new account only I could access. Gloria's niece, who worked at a bank in Montego Bay, helped me understand what financial documents I'd need. The night before my flight home, Gloria sat with me on my balcony. The same ocean view that had once represented my exile now framed the sunset on a day of renewed purpose. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Terrified," I admitted. "But staying here, accepting what they did, that scares me more." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "They thought you were a frail old woman they could discard. Show them who Rose Coleman really is." As my plane lifted off Jamaican soil the next morning, I clutched a folder containing everything I'd discovered. My mind raced with what awaited me in the confrontation to come. This wasn't just abandonment, it was calculated. And now I was coming home to settle the account.
The taxi pulled up to Patrice's house exactly 9 days after I'd left for my vacation. 10 days since I'd hugged my grandchildren goodbye. 10 days since my daughter had looked me in the eyes while orchestrating my banishment. The sprawling colonial looked exactly the same, pristine and picture-perfect.
Inside those walls, Patrice and Greg probably thought their lives had returned to normal. The inconvenient mother safely disposed of, the money secured, the future bright. They had no idea what was coming. I paid the driver with money Gloria had insisted I take until you get back on your feet. My hands trembled slightly as I wheeled my suitcase up the familiar driveway, but my resolve never wavered. The doorbell chimed, that pretentious Westminster melody Greg had installed because it sounded classy. Footsteps approached. The door swung open. Greg stood frozen, his face draining of color, as if he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, Greg," I said calmly. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" He stammered, eyes darting behind me as if searching for an explanation. "Rose, how did you—" I brushed past him into the foyer I'd cleaned every Tuesday for 3 years. "Where's my daughter? I believe we have some unfinished business." "Greg, who's at the door?" Patrice called from the kitchen, her voice light and carefree. The sound of it sent anger coursing through me like electricity. When she rounded the corner and saw me, she dropped the wineglass she was holding. Red liquid splashed across the pristine white tiles like blood. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Surprising how uncomfortable that question can be when you're on the receiving end, isn't it? I set my purse down on the entryway table. "Where are the children? I'd like to say hello before we talk." "They're at friends' houses," Greg interjected quickly, recovering some composure. "Listen, Rose, there seems to be some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I cut him off. "You and my daughter stole my home, embezzled my retirement, and abandoned me in a foreign country. Which part of my misunderstanding exactly?" Patrice's shock was morphing into something defensive, her jaw setting in that stubborn way it had since childhood. "Mom, you're being dramatic. We were trying to help you start a new life, somewhere beautiful with warm weather like you always talked about. By stealing from me? By lying to me? That's not help, Patrice. That's criminal." Greg stepped forward, his banker's instinct for damage control kicking in. "Rose, let's all calm down and discuss this reasonably. There's no need for accusations." I pulled out my phone, my new phone purchased at the airport, and pressed play on a recording. Patrice's voice filled the room. "We sold your house years ago. Your retirement savings have been reallocated." Greg's face hardened. "You recorded our phone call? That's not even legal." "Actually, in Jamaica, single-party consent is perfectly legal for recording phone conversations. I checked." "Just like elder financial abuse is illegal in all 50 states. I checked that too." The front door opened behind us, and Lily walked in, followed by Tommy. They froze at the tableau before them, their parents facing off against the grandmother they'd been told was never coming back. "Grandma?" Tommy's voice cracked as he launched himself at me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "You came back." Lily approached more cautiously, years of witnessing their parents' manipulation making her wary. "They said you decided to stay in Jamaica, that you liked it better there." "Did they?" I embraced Tommy while holding Lily's gaze. "They lied to you, sweetheart. They sent me away and tried to make sure I couldn't come home." "Mom," Patrice hissed, "don't do this in front of the children." "Why not? You had no problem lying to them. Why should I protect that lie?" Greg stepped forward toward the children. "Kids, go to your rooms. This is grown-up business." "No, stay right where you are." I countered. "This affects them too. They deserve the truth." Lily's eyes darted between us, her 13-year-old mind processing the adult betrayal unfolding. "Is that why you were crying when Grandma left, Mom? Because you knew she couldn't come back?" Patrice flinched. "That's not—" "And why you and Dad were arguing about Grandma's money," Tommy added, pieces clicking into place. "You said it was all gone." Greg's face flushed with anger. "That's enough, both of you. Upstairs now." "No," Lily said quietly, moving to stand beside me. "I want to hear what Grandma has to say." The power in the room shifted palpably. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being managed, controlled, or dismissed. I laid out everything: the systematic isolation, the financial theft, the insurance policy. With each revelation, Patrice's face grew paler and Greg's more rigid. The children listened in horrified silence. You kept saying Grandma was confused, but she's not confused at all, is she? Of course she is, Patrice snapped, desperation edging her tone. Mom has been forgetting things for years. We've been protecting her from herself. By taking out a life insurance policy on me without my knowledge, by emptying my accounts, that's not protection, Patrice. That's theft. That's fraud. You have no proof, Greg cut in coldly. I smiled for the first time. Actually, I do. Every email, every transfer, every document you thought I was too old or too technologically inept to find. I have copies of everything. The look that passed between them confirmed what I already knew. They'd never expected me to fight back. They'd counted on my age, my isolation, my trusting nature. So what now? Patrice asked, her voice hollow. You go to the police? Drag our family name through the mud? Traumatize your grandchildren even more? That depends on you, I replied. I've consulted an attorney. Here's what happens next. I outlined my terms: complete financial restoration, a new place for me to live, and supervised visitation with my grandchildren until trust could be rebuilt. The alternative was criminal charges, public exposure, and the professional ruin that would surely follow for both of them. Greg began calculating odds behind his eyes, the banker weighing risks versus rewards. Patrice simply stared, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Why would you even want to stay near us after this? Why not just take the money and go? I looked at Tommy and Lily, who had moved to either side of me like sentinels. Because unlike you, I don't abandon family, even when they hurt me. That's when Lily spoke up, her young voice steady with conviction. I want to live with Grandma. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Don't be ridiculous, Patrice sputtered. You can't just... I heard you and Dad, Lily interrupted, the night before Grandma left. You said once the money came through from the life insurance, we could upgrade to the lake house. You were waiting for her to die. The blood drained from Patrice's face. Greg took an unconscious step backward. Is that true? Tommy whispered, looking up at his parents with new eyes. Were you waiting for Grandma to die?
The legal proceedings took 6 months. Not the dramatic courtroom showdown you see in movies, but a methodical process of affidavits, depositions, and settlement negotiations. I could have pursued criminal charges. The district attorney certainly wanted to, but in the end, I chose a different path. For the grandchildren's sake. The financial settlement was substantial. Every penny they'd taken with interest, plus damages for emotional distress and elder abuse. Greg lost his position at the bank when evidence of financial impropriety came to light. Patrice's carefully cultivated social standing crumbled as whispers spread through their exclusive circles. But the true reckoning wasn't financial. It was personal. 2 weeks after my return, I received an unexpected call from Thomas, my son, who had drifted away years ago after arguments with his sister and father. Mom? His voice was hesitant, older than I remembered. I got a call from Lily. She told me what happened. Is it true? We met at a coffee shop, this stranger who shared my blood. At 38, Thomas had my eyes and his father's stubborn chin. He'd built a life 3 states away, a small construction business, a wife named Melody, 2 young children I'd never met. I should have stayed in touch, he admitted, turning his coffee cup in restless circles. After Dad died and you moved in with Patrice, it just seemed easier to stay away. We both made mistakes, I acknowledged. Thomas leaned forward, eyes intent. But what they did to you, that wasn't a mistake. That was deliberate. Criminal. Yes, I agreed simply. It was. With Thomas's help, I found a small house to rent in his town. Nothing fancy, but mine, on my terms. The settlement money ensured I'd never have financial worries again. The restraining order against Greg and supervised visitation requirements for Patrice ensured my safety and peace of mind. But the most unexpected development came 3 months after my return, when the family court judge made her ruling. Based on evidence presented and the expressed wishes of the minor children, she declared,
Temporary custody of Lily and Thomas Coleman Jr. is granted to their grandmother, Rose Coleman, with scheduled visitation rights for the parents pending completion of family counseling and financial restitution. Patrice wept openly in the courtroom. Greg stared straight ahead, his jaw locked. The children, sitting beside me, each squeezed one of my hands. Building our new life took time. The children had nightmares at first, fears of abandonment, of more family secrets. We attended therapy together, learning to talk about the hard things, the painful things. Thomas and his family became regular visitors, the cousins forging bonds that should have existed years earlier. Patrice called once a week, her voice strained but persistent. Our conversations were brief, superficial. The bridge between us had burned to ash, and neither of us knew how to rebuild it. Perhaps with enough time, we might construct something new, something honest, but not yet. 6 months into our new arrangement, I sat on the porch of my rental house, watching Tommy teach his younger cousin how to throw a proper spiral. Lily lounged nearby with a book, occasionally looking up to offer commentary. Thomas and Melody prepared dinner in my kitchen, their easy laughter drifting through the open windows. Gloria called on Sunday without fail, our unlikely friendship a bright spot in this new chapter. "You doing okay, Fida?" I asked her in her melodic Jamaican lilt. "Better than okay. I'm living." After we hung up, I closed my eyes and let the evening breeze wash over me. At 62, I'd lost what I thought was everything, only to discover how much more life had waiting for me. Not just survival, but joy, purpose, connection. The betrayal that was meant to end me had instead freed me. Later that night, as I tucked Tommy into bed, this boy who had chosen to follow me into an uncertain future, rather than stay in his parents' beautiful, hollow house, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Grandma, do you hate Mom for what she did?" I considered my answer carefully. "No, Tommy, I don't hate her. I'm angry and hurt, and I don't trust her, but hate would only hurt me more, and I've been hurt enough." He nodded solemnly. "I think I understand. It's like you said, sometimes the people who should love us the most are the ones who teach us the hardest lessons." Out of the mouths of babes. As I closed his door and walked down the hall to check on Lily, I reflected on all that had happened. My daughter had sent me away on a one-way ticket, expecting me to disappear quietly into exile. Instead, I'd found my way back, not just to the country I'd been forced to leave, but to myself. The woman who boarded that plane to Jamaica was timid, doubtful, willing to believe she was as incapable as they'd convinced her she was. The woman who returned was awake, alive, and fiercely determined to reclaim what was hers, not just money or possessions, but dignity, self-determination, the right to be more than someone else's inconvenience. If you're watching this and feeling trapped, undervalued, or pushed aside because of your age, I hope my story reminds you, you are not finished. Your life is not over. Your voice still matters. And sometimes the journey back to yourself begins with the courage to say no more. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more truths too many would rather leave unspoken. Our community is stronger when we share our stories, the beautiful ones and the painful ones alike. Lastly, download your ebook titled Suspense and Thriller Stories by clicking the link in the pinned comment. Remember, family isn't always who shares your blood. Sometimes it's who helps you find your way home, even if that home is a place you've never been before.